Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our community meeting on the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project. We're going to give it a minute for folks to join. All right, while others are joining us, we'll just go over a little bit of housekeeping. May I have the next slide? Thank you. We want to enable everyone to use our interpretation services. So via Zoom, click on the interpretation icon, pick the language you would like to listen to, and Spanish translation presentation has been posted to the chat as well. And my colleague Kevin is going to provide this information in Spanish.
Hola, buen día. Para seleccionar interpretación en español, por favor haga clic en el icono de interpretación y escoja la opción para escuchar en español. El enlace de la presentación en español está disponible en el chat.
Gracias, Kevin. Next slide, please. We want to acknowledge that today's meeting is being recorded, so our attendees' cameras are off and their microphones are muted. For technical support, you can please call or text 323-917-1840. Again, that's 323-917-1840. Next slide, please. We look forward to hearing from you, and you're welcome to submit questions for the Metro and project design teams using the Q&A function in Zoom. We'll answer as many questions as we can in the time available, focusing on questions of broadest interest. All questions, including those we aren't able to get to today, will be shared with the project teams for their consideration. So if you have technical issues, again, with using our Q&A feature, please call or text 323-917-1840. And again, please use that Q&A feature. We do ask that your questions are respectful. So if you have, if any questions are asked that are of a disrespectful nature, they will be removed. Thank you. Next, safety. Safety remains Metro's top priority, and we're taking a multi-layered safety strategy with law enforcement, Metro Transit Security, Metro ambassadors, and home outreach teams all working together to ensure the safety of our customers and employees. We know safety is on our minds, and the last few weeks have been particularly difficult. And while even one incident is too much, the crime data provided to us by law enforcement is starting to make clear that our strategy is working. As riders, you play a role as well. We encourage you to utilize the Transit Watch app. When you see something, please say something. The app is monitored in real time to issue and to address issues and to track trends. To learn more about Metro's safety strategy, please go to metro.net/riding/safety-security. Thank you. Next slide, please. One of our exciting programs we have is the Go Pass, which allows students of all ages participating in our K-12 schools and community colleges to ride free on Metro and other transit agencies. This project has been very successful, and this past month, our board took steps to ensure that the Go Pass program would be permanent. It's great news for our students as well as our community who are being introduced to the system and are able to use it not only to get to school, but in the evenings and on the weekends, and we hope will become lifetime riders. To learn more about if your school or district is participating, contact your school or visit metro.net/GoPass. Thank you. Now we're going to launch a Zoom poll to just get a sense of who's in our meeting today. Both of these polls are launched simultaneously, so please take a moment to indicate where you live. And then secondly, have you participated in the project previously, attended a meeting, submitted a comment? It's always great for us to know, especially if we've got some new viewers. Stevie, how are the numbers looking?
They look great. We're about 80%. So we'll give it a couple more
Okay.
seconds. We'll go ahead and close.
Thank you. And thank you all for participating. All right, let's close the poll and see what we learn. All right. So it looks like a majority of you all are coming from the west side, about 40 or 32%. We have a good contingency from central LA, at the San Gabriel Valley, and some outside of Los Angeles County. Really great. And then a majority of you, 61%, have attended meetings before, but we have 39% are new viewers. And that's really exciting for our communications team, as we are consistently trying to be out there in the community, engaging new members to join and learn more about this project. So we thank you all for your participation, whether you've met with us in the past or just joining. Next slide. We want to give you a quick overview of what you'll be participating in today. I'll share with you in a moment our speakers, because we have new members always, and it's just great to review. We'll do a project background, talk about our current phase and the environmental review, our journey so far, and then the focus for our meeting on monorail alternatives and the potential removal of alternative 2. And then the next steps, how you can provide your comments about what you've heard today and about the project. And of course, our question and answer feature. Next slide. So again, we did talk earlier. I just want to remind everyone for Q&A, please use that feature at the bottom of your screen and click on Q&A. Some of those questions are going to be answered live, and others we will respond to throughout the meeting. So as they're answered, they will be posted. So speakers today, again, I'm Stephanie Mullen, your Community Relations Manager, and it's a pleasure speaking with you all. I'll be passing the mic in a moment to Ray Sosa, our Chief Planning Officer. You're also going to hear from Corey Zelmer, our Deputy Executive Officer from Countywide Planning, and Anthony Crump, Executive Officer in Community Relations. Next slide. I think this is where I pass it to Ray. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Let me first state, as head of Metro's Countywide Planning and Development Department, is that we have a plan, and it's called the Long Range Transportation Plan, which is, among many things, is to help make it easier for us to get around to services, jobs, homes, and schools, and basically anywhere in Los Angeles. And although the long range transportation may be high level, it looks 30 to 40 years out in the future, it does identify key corridors for us to study to improve travel. We use a corridor planning study or corridor planning process and work in collaboration with local communities to identify a range of alternatives that we can narrow down over time to find that solution. If one of those solutions rises to the top, we understand what it means to fully implement it. So that's what we're doing in this corridor and many other corridors in Los Angeles County. In this region in particular, we know that there's this natural barrier of the Santa Monica Mountains, making traveling between the valley and the west side extremely challenging. with very few options other than to drive in a car. So we really require innovations in technology as well as delivery. Next slide. And in this corridor, there is the 405, which is extremely congested, making travel times within that corridor very unreliable and likely most of the time not great. So we have to work at looking at options because there are limited options, like I said, within the corridor. Over 400,000 trips are made on every weekday through that corridor, with less than 2% of those trips using transit. Next slide. So there are goals and objectives in this study. We want to improve mobility for everybody, whether you're driving a car, whether you want to take a bus, you want to take a bicycle. We want to make sure that there's improvement for everybody. We also want to make sure that the solutions that we come up with are cost effective and minimize risks and also support local economic and community development. And at the same time, we know that this is a very sensitive corridor, so we want to make sure we protect environmental resources and enhance the corridor's resiliency in case we have any sort of emergency, natural or non-natural. We can have a system that we can depend on. Next slide. So we're weaving all our alternatives across 4 areas. We want to improve transit. We want to reduce congestion. We want to do those things in a multimodal, holistic way. So looking at the complete range of solutions that provide access and opportunity for everybody in a fair and equitable manner. And we want to do that in a sustainable way. So with that, I'm ready to hand it over to our project director, Corey Selmer. Corey?
Thank you, Ray, and good afternoon, everyone. As Stephanie mentioned, we'd like to start with a little bit of background on the project for those newer to the project with us. And what I'd like to do is start by going back through a few key milestones and events that brought us to where we are currently in the project. And that goes back as far as 2016, when LA County voters approved Measure M, which is a half-cent sales tax throughout the county that allowed for funding to go towards this project and for the implementation of transit improvements between the San Fernando Valley, the West Side, and eventually LAX. Following the passage of the sales tax, Metro kicked off in 2017 a transit feasibility study. This was our first opportunity to take a wide look at all the different options that we could deploy to solve the problem of transportation in this area. We started out with a large number of alternatives, looking at different alignments to the area, looking at different station locations, considering different transit technologies. And at the end of that study, we identified 4 alternatives that we believed were feasible and merited further consideration, specifically between the Valley and the West Side. Now, before kicking off any further study for the project, Metro initiated an invitation to invite the private sector to join us as part of what's called a pre-development agreement, which is designed to incentivize innovation and to allow private sector entities to bring forward their ideas and their proposals for solving the transportation problems we were confronted. That process happened in 2020, and in 2021, we identified 2 teams that the Metro Board approved pre-development agreements with, and those teams are LA Skyrail Express, who is advancing a monorail concept, and Sepulveda Transit Corridor Partners, who proposed a heavy rail concept. And then later in 2021, Metro officially began the environmental review process, where we brought to the public 6 transit alternatives for further study. So some of you may wonder, well, how did we get to 6 alternatives? Well, that began with the feasibility study, as I mentioned, in 2019, where we had 4 alternatives that we believed merited further consideration. We provided that information to the private sector teams we invited to partner with. Those teams, as I mentioned, submitted proposals in the summer of 2020. We reviewed those proposals and ultimately selected 2 teams that I just mentioned. Now, with those proposals, the 2 teams brought forward 2 initial ideas, what we refer to today as Alternative 1 and Alternative 4. Those were what were included as part of the PDA proposals. Then during the process of awarding the pre-development agreements at the Metro board, we received a lot of great feedback from the community around those two proposed alternatives. And they really were focused on two main topics. One, providing a good connection to UCLA campus, and two, making sure Metro studied an alternative in the San Fernando Valley that was underground. So based on that feedback, the PDA teams agreed to bring forward two additional alternatives, what we refer to today as Alternative 3 and Alternative 5. So that brought us to 4. So Metro looked back at the feasibility study and recognized that one alternative from that study in 2019 was not being proposed by either PDA team. That alternative is referred to as Alternative 6 today and was different from the others in that it followed an alignment through the valley along Van Nuys Boulevard. So Metro decided to add Alternative 6 to our study. So we're at 5, and just before initiating the environmental review process, the monorail team, LA Skyrail Express, or LASER, brought forward a third monorail proposal, what we refer to today as Alternative 2, for Metro's review and consideration. And that rounded out the 6 alternatives that we presented to the public as part of the public scoping process in 2021 that officially launched our CEQA, or State Environmental Review process. And these 6 alternatives have been what we've been studying over the last several years, both in additional planning and design development work. So where we are currently, as Stephanie mentioned, is we're in the environmental review process. And again, for those newer to the project with us, let me give a little bit of context here. So the map on the right is our study area. It's the lighter shaded area in the middle of the map. And that area extends from Panorama City in the San Fernando Valley through the Santa Monica Mountains, south to roughly the 10 freeway on the south end or the bottom of the map. The 405 freeway runs primarily through the middle of this study area. Now, the overall objective for our project is still to provide a high quality, high capacity, and reliable transit service connecting the San Fernando Valley and the west side. Although we have 6 alternatives and a lot to consider, all alternatives have several characteristics or specifications in common. Starting with, they all have a northernmost station at the Van Nuys Metrolink Amtrak station on Van Nuys Boulevard. They all have a southernmost station at the Metro E or Expo line at the bottom of the map. They all require at least one maintenance and storage facility. And they all provide connections to Metro's other high capacity transit lines, specifically the future East San Fernando Valley Light Rail Transit Corridor, shown in turquoise on the map, the existing Metro G or Orange line, shown on the map, the future Metro D or Purple line extension, and the existing Metro E or Expo line. And all alternatives are being designed with the ability to extend in the future as part of a separate project, extend south to LAX. So here are the project alternatives in a quick view. Now, these are small maps, we understand, and we'd like to refer you to our project website, which has much of this information available, and you can look at it in more detail at your own time. I'll just go quickly through this description here of the 6 alternatives and allow you to spend time separately to get into more detail. So as I mentioned, 6 build alternatives in total were carried into the environmental review process. The first alternatives 1 through 3 are all monorail technology alternatives. They're proposing an automated monorail, which means they do not require a driver to operate the trains. The 3 maps at the top are those 3 alternatives. I'll spend more time in the presentation later on describing those alternatives. So I'd like to now switch to the remaining 3 alternatives, alternatives 4 through 6. These are heavy rail alternatives. These are most similar to today's existing B and D line in the Metro system. Alternatives 4 and 5 are being advanced by one of the PDA teams, Sepulveda Transit Corridor Partners, and they are also both proposing automated heavy rail technology, which means the trains do not require an operator. So let me go through a description of each of these. I'll start with alternative 4 first. Now, alternatives 4 and 5 have the exact same alignment and proposed station locations for both of them, so for both 4 and 5. So I'll walk through alternative 4, and then I'll just explain the difference alternative 5 has from alternative 4. So starting with alternative 4, that alternative starts in the north at an aerial station at the Van Nuys Metrolink Amtrak station. It then continues northwest or along the Metrolink right-of-way on an aerial structure, which means above the street, before turning south along Sepulveda Boulevard on an aerial alignment with a station at Sherman Way, a station at the Metro G line at Sepulveda, and a station at Ventura Boulevard and Sepulveda. Then south of Ventura Boulevard, the alignment transitions from an aerial structure to a tunnel and remains in the tunnel through the Santa Monica Mountains to an underground station at UCLA, an underground station beneath the D Purple Line extension at Wilshire Boulevard, an underground station at Santa Monica in Sepulveda, and a final underground station at the E Expo line at Santa Monica or at Sepulveda. Now, alternative 5 again follows that exact same alignment and has the exact same station locations. The primary difference, though, is that the alignment in the valley between the northernmost Van Nuys Metrolink station to roughly just south of Ventura Boulevard, that portion of the alignment for alternative 5 is underground in a tunnel, as opposed to aerial for alternative 4. Now moving to alternative 6, this one, as I mentioned, is different in that it follows the Van Nuys Boulevard corridor in the San Fernando Valley. Starting on the north, there's a station at the Metrolink Amtrak station. And again, this alignment is entirely underground for its entire length. It starts with an underground station at Van Nuys Metrolink, another underground station at the Metro G line. Moving south along Van Nuys Boulevard, there's a third station at Ventura and Van Nuys. Then it travels through the Santa Monica Mountains with a station under UCLA campus, station under the D Purple Line extension at Wilshire Boulevard. Then the alignment moves west of the 405 to a station on Santa Monica near Barrington, and a final station at the E Expo line at the Bundy station. So these are the 6 in total build alternatives that we've been advancing to date. In addition to the build alternatives, we consider what's called a no project alternative, which is simply looking at future conditions, but without implementing any of the alternatives shown here on the maps. And finally, just a point, Metro is reviewing all information being prepared by the various design teams in support of preparation of the environmental impact report. And of course, Metro is the lead for preparation of the environmental impact report. So here's a graphic for our overall project development process. The green arrow on the left is where we've been. The orange arrow on the right is where we want to end up with a service opening for the public to use. We're at the yellow dot currently in the environmental review phase. Right now, we're preparing a number of technical studies for each of the alternatives. These studies eventually inform and feed into the preparation of the draft environmental impact report. We do expect to release the draft environmental impact report early next calendar year with at least a 60-day public review period. And then following that review period, we expect that Metro staff will take to the Metro board a recommendation for a locally preferred alternative, or essentially the recommended project to advance storage construction. And should the Metro board choose to approve that project, we would then move into preparation of the final environmental impact report, and in parallel begin the federal environmental review process as well. Once we complete both the state and federal environmental review steps, we will have completed the entirety of the environmental review phase. So how do we get to a single project that we would recommend? Well, there are a number of inputs that go into that evaluation, starting with public input. We want to hear from the public, from you, about your thoughts and concerns around the different alternatives being proposed, any thoughts about potential environmental impacts that may be associated with those. We will also conduct environmental analysis, which I'll speak about in just a moment. We're also looking at technical feasibility. Can these projects be built in the constrained environment we are working in? We also want to look at schedule. How long would it take to get each of these projects open for service for the public? And lastly, financial considerations, both in terms of what it takes to build and operate, maintain a new transit line, as well as looking at leveraging our existing local resources to perhaps pursue other opportunities at the state and federal level for funding. So in terms of the environmental review itself, it's one component of this evaluation, and it's an important one. It gives us a lot of good information in which to make decisions from. During the process, we want to evaluate the performance and benefits of each of the alternatives. We obviously study the potential for environmental impacts associated with both the construction and operation of each alternative. We also want to look at the proposed project and the impacts of that project in relation or in combination with other projects in the study area with similar impacts. We refer to that as cumulative impacts. And lastly, where we do identify potentially significant impacts, we strive to also find mitigation measures, which are simply actions we take to potentially avoid or substantially lessen the potential significant adverse impacts. So within the environmental impact report are a lot of different topic areas, and those are listed out here. And we've talked about these in the past, and they're just here for reference, but we've already heard a lot of good feedback from the communities around some of these topics themselves, such as air quality or noise and vibration or visual quality and aesthetics. And all of the technical reports that I referred to previously that are currently underway refer to these various topic areas. And eventually we will compile this information into the draft environmental impact report, and again, expect to release that early next calendar year. So with that, let me hand it to Anthony, who will take us through our outreach efforts to date.
Thank you, Corey. Once again, my name is Anthony Crump. I'm the Executive Officer for Community Relations. So the journey of our current phase started in November of 2021 when we kicked off the environmental review process with our scoping meeting. At that time, we held 3 virtual meetings with more than 500 attendees and received more than 3,000 comments as part of the scoping period. We continued our outreach with a survey in the summer of 2022 that was conducted in English and Spanish via telephone and online. We had more than 1,000 respondents to that survey. We continued our outreach in January of 2023 with our station location open houses. We held 2 in-person meetings and 1 virtual meeting with more than 500 attendees in total. We also received more than 1,800 submissions covering a variety of topics, including the heavy rail alternatives, support for an on-campus UCLA station, as well as questions about the monorail connections to UCLA. We continued our outreach with travel time and boarding meetings in October and November of 2023. Once again, we held 2 in-person and 1 virtual meeting and had more than 500 attendees in total. During this period, we also received more than 720 submissions. For all of these activities, we did a report out to both the general public as well as to our board of directors. To date, we have held approximately, including today's meeting, approximately 14 public meetings with more than 2,000 people in attendance. We built an email database of more than 17,000 contacts, and we received nearly 6,000 comments and submissions over the course of the last couple of years. In addition, we've sent out more than 70 blast emails and engaged more than 6,000 stakeholders to date. Which brings us to today. As Corey mentioned before, today's focus is on the potential elimination of alternative 2. And while we have information available on all 6 alternatives during the presentation, as well as on our website, our focus today is really on the potential elimination of alternative 2. Even as we look at the alternative 2 and the monorail alternatives, we will continue with our technical analysis over the next several months. As information becomes available and is ready for distribution, we'll be releasing that to the public through a series of outreach and engagement meetings. Information includes things like construction and operational costs, impacts from construction, as well as potential mitigation measures, as well as the construction schedule and some project benefits. When we look at the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project, one of the things that we wanted to do was imagine how our customers and how our riders may actually experience the finished project once it's done. To do that, we've created what we call customer journeys. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 customer journeys. We have a total of 6, which are going to be available on our website. Our first customer journey looks at a hotel worker in Santa Monica traveling from Panorama City via Van Nuys to downtown Santa Monica via Expo on Alternative 1. You'll note that with this particular alternative, our transit user saves approximately 42 minutes in commute time. Our next customer journey features a graduate student at UCLA who lives in Sherman Oaks and travels from the Ventura Boulevard station to UCLA on alternative 2. And you'll note that Conrack, our graduate student, saves approximately 24 minutes using this particular alternative. Our third and final customer journey for today includes a paralegal from Valley Glen working in Century City, traveling from Van Nuys to Century City Constellation Station on alternative 3. We'll note that Rita, our paralegal, saves approximately 52 minutes with this particular alternative. All of the customer journeys will be available on our website. All 6 of them will be available on our website following our series of meetings. But with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Corey to talk a little bit more about the proposed removal of alternative 2. Corey?
Thank you, Anthony. And let me start by first giving overview description of each of the 3 monorail alternatives that have been studied to date. Again, there are a few folks with us today who may be newer to this information, so I'll walk through it briefly here before talking about the removal of alternative 2. So all 3 monorail alternatives have the same alignment and the same proposed station locations between the Van Nuys Metrolink station on the north down to the Getty Center halfway through the Santa Monica Mountains. So let me just describe that alignment first, and I will not do that again for the remaining 2, and just describe the differences between these 3, which primarily revolve around how the alignments interact with the Metro D Purple Line, as well as provide connections to UCLA campus. So first of all, starting with alternative 1, this is a fully aerial alignment for its entire length. It begins with an aerial station at the Van Nuys Metrolink station at Van Nuys Boulevard, then moves west-northwest near the Metrolink right-of-way to the 405 freeway. From here, it turns south on the east side of the 405 freeway with a station stop at Sherman Way, continuing south to a aerial station at Metro G or Orange Line, again continuing south along the 405 to a station near Ventura Boulevard and the 405. And then from here, staying within the 405 corridor, south through the Santa Monica Mountains along the 405 to a station stop at Getty Center. From here, the alignment remains aerial and along the 405 freeway south until Wilshire Boulevard, where if you look at the map on the left there, the alignment just moves west of the 405 to a station just west of the 405 at Wilshire Boulevard, where passengers can connect to the Metro D or Purple Line, or they can also connect to an electric bus shuttle to connect to UCLA campus, with stops on the bus shuttle at LeConte and at Gateway Plaza next to the Luskin Conference Center. Alternative 2, again, has the same alignment, has the same proposed station locations, and is aerial for its entire length to Getty Center. South of Getty Center, it stays also in the 405 corridor on an aerial structure, continues south to Wilshire, where if you look at the map on the left, the alignment leaves the 405 corridor, moves east to Veteran Avenue, where there's this monorail station, aerial monorail station at Veteran Avenue. At this point, passengers can transfer to either the D Purple Line at Wilshire and Gailey, or transfer to an underground automated people mover, APM, which would transport them to UCLA campus with stops at LeConte and at Gateway Plaza, again next to the Luskin Conference Center. South of Wilshire Boulevard, the alignment returns back to the 405 corridor, continuing south to a stop at Santa Monica Boulevard and a final stop at E Expo Line near Sepulveda Boulevard. And finally, alternative 3, again, starting at the Getty Center, transitions from an aerial alignment into a tunnel, moving east into the Santa Monica Mountains and south towards UCLA. There's an underground station at UCLA at Gateway Plaza. Continues south to an underground station beneath the D Purple Line extension. Here, passengers connect to the D Purple Line. Then south of Wilshire, the alignment transitions from a tunnel back to an aerial structure as it enters into the 405 freeway again, with stops at Santa Monica and a final stop at the E Expo Line near Sepulveda Boulevard. So these are the 3 alternatives that have been studied to date. In terms of numbers at a glance, here's a summary of some information that we have provided in the past as part of prior meetings, as Anthony mentioned. Starting at the top with the overall length of the monorail system itself, which ranges between 15 and 16 miles. The configuration of the alignment, which means is it on a structure above the street, what we call aerial, or is it underground in a tunnel? The number of stations, 8 or 9. The additional station for alternative 3 is on UCLA campus. Different ways to connect to UCLA, as I described a moment ago. The overall end-to-end travel time, so going from the northernmost station at Van Nuys Metrolink all the way down to the E Expo Line, ranges between 28 minutes to 32 minutes, which is highly competitive with the private automobile today. And also the travel times between the northernmost station at Van Nuys Metrolink to UCLA, which ranges between 24 to 39 minutes, again, with different options for connecting to UCLA. And lastly, the number of weekday boardings we anticipate on these different alternatives, which range between 65,000 roughly and 86,000, which are competitive with our B and D subway lines today, and even better than many of the light rail lines we have in the system. So in terms of removing alternative 2 specifically, let me start by again recapping how we got here. As I mentioned, it was the last alternative to be included in our environmental study. It was added at the request of LA Skyrail Express in 2021, again in response to the feedback we were getting around providing good options for connecting to UCLA. More recently, however, LA Skyrail Express requested that alternative 2 be removed from further consideration, and that was based on their own evaluation to date over the number of years they've been studying it, and in comparison to alternatives 1 and 3, which they are still advancing. Metro received this request and independently considered it. And from an environmental perspective, we acknowledged or determined 2 points. 1, that alternative 2 is challenged to provide environmental advantages over the other alternatives, which essentially means we do not expect alternative 2 to avoid or substantially lessen impacts associated with other alternatives. That largely, the challenges that we refer to are largely associated with the alignment that is unique to Alternative 2, shown there in the map in the bottom left inset, where the alignment tries to come out of the 405 freeway along Wilshire Boulevard to a station at Veteran, and in so doing passes by the Los Angeles National Cemetery and makes its way around the federal building on Wilshire, which is an historic resource, on its way to returning to the 405 and continuing south. The second point we determined was that even after removing Alternative 2, we are still left with a reasonable range of alternatives for study in our environmental process that would allow for meaningful participation from the public and allow for informed decision-making by Metro and the board of directors. And lastly, public feedback. We're looking for feedback in today's meeting specifically and in the remaining meetings in this series on this proposal so that we can make a final determination on the status of Alternative 2. So removing an alternative is not unique and is not new. It's obviously allowed per CEQA or the state environmental guidelines. In many cases, the documentation of why an alternative was introduced and then later removed is contained in a section of the EIR or in the administrative record, which comprises the EIR. This has been done on other metro planning studies as listed here. And of course, as the EIR progresses, should alternatives be further modified due to new information or due to public feedback, we'll be sure to describe the final state of each alternative that is evaluated as part of the environmental impact report. And as Anthony mentioned, we'll continue to strive to keep the public informed as we continue with our environmental review process. And with that, let me hand it back to Anthony to close out with next steps.
Thank you, Corey. So once again, we want to thank you for attending today's virtual community meeting on the potential removal of Alternative 2. On Saturday, we had our first meeting in Van Nuys, and if you're unable to attend either Saturday's meeting or today's meeting, we have another in-person meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening, Tuesday, May 14th, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Westwood United Methodist Church. Please note that the presentation will begin about 30 minutes after the meeting start time. Once we've concluded the third and final in-person meeting tomorrow evening, we will continue with the technical analysis of the alternatives. This includes looking at construction operating cost estimates, impacts from noise, vibration, potential mitigation measures, as well as a construction schedule. We understand that this can be somewhat frustrating and take a long time. However, this is a very complex project, and we really want to make sure that we get it right. Once we have concluded the studies and more information becomes available and it's ready to be shared with the public, we'll be doing additional rounds of outreach in advance of the release of the draft environmental impact report. Right now, we anticipate that the DEIR, or draft environmental impact report, will be released in early 2025. Again, today's focus is on the potential removal of Alternative 2. We do ask that you share your comments and your input with us by Thursday, May 23rd. You can do so in our in-person community meetings, the one that we're having tomorrow evening. You can do that by sending an email to sepulvedatransit@metro.net. You can also use the QR code that's shown on the screen right now, or you can actually send us mail to Peter Carter, Project Manager at 1 Gateway Plaza. Once we've received all of the input and comments and information from the public, we'll do a summary report on the feedback that we've received. We'll also be doing a report and making a final decision regarding the removal of Alternative 2 that will release to the public as well as to the Metro Board of Directors. So we'll be taking some time, approximately the next 14 minutes, to do questions and answers. Once again, I want to thank you all for joining us. If you would like to submit a question, we ask that you please use the Q&A function in Zoom. Then we will be going through those questions as we receive them. We'll be going through as many questions as we possibly can. And all of the questions will be submitted to the product team for consideration. And with that, why don't we go to our first question? And with that, I think we're going to wrap up our questions and answers for today. Once again, I want to thank everyone for participating and spending some time with us today. We do have another in-person meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening at 5:30 to 7:30 at the Westwood United Methodist Church. The address, time, location, et cetera, is also available on our website, so feel free to access it there. To keep in contact with us, you can again use the QR code that's shown on the screen now. You can send us an email. You can call the project hotline. You can also visit our website at metro.net/Sepulveda corridor. Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.